Good morning and welcome. My name is Stephen Clark, and I have the honor of serving as the superintendent of the 5 National Park Service units located here in beautiful western Pennsylvania, including Flight 93 National Memorial. We come together this day to honor the heroes of Flight 93, who, in the skies over this field, gave their lives in order to thwart an attack on our nation's capital. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the many dignitaries and representatives in attendance today. First, I'd like to recognize the president of the families of Flight 93, Gordon Felt, and all of the family members in attendance this morning. The United States Vice President Mike Pence and his wife, Second Lady Karen Pence. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf, Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke and his wife Lola, Congressman Bill Schuster, representing Pennsylvania's 9th District, and representing Pennsylvania's 12th District, Congressman Keith Rothfuss, and Acting Director of the National Park Service, Mr. Mike Reynolds. And finally, to our many federal, state, and local representatives and partners, thank you for your continuous contributions in keeping alive the memory of the passengers and crew of Flight 93. At this time, will you please rise for the singing of our national anthem performed by the United States Air Force's Celtic Air.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please remain standing as the Reverend Paul Britton, brother of passenger Marion R. Britton, leads us in a moment of silence.
The Russian writer and mystic Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote, "It was only when I lay there in the rotting prison straw that I sensed within myself the first stirrings of the good. Gradually it was disclosed to me that the line separating the good from the evil passes not through parties, states, or between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through all human hearts." And so he wrote, in a great strangeness for many of us. So bless you, prison, for having been in my life. With Solzhenitsyn as an inspiration, let us take a moment to find the gift of one difficult thing we have faced, and to give thanksgiving for its teachings. The mutual gift of the memory of this day most especially. When the 40 faced their most difficult moment, with boldness, with courage, and with strength, in order to follow the good that was within them and to express a common good for all. As we remember their actions and their character, who are we to think less of ourselves in our suffering and in our hurt and in our pain? When evil challenges the good in us, we can, with their memory, in their memory, and through their memory, rise as they did. Please join in a moment of quiet and meditation. Amen and amen. Please be seated.
Thank you, Reverend Britton. At this time, Park Ranger Robert Franz will lead the reading of the names of the passengers and crew of Flight 93. Mr. Franz will be joined by family members reading the names of their loved ones. For each name, United Airlines Captain David Dosh and flight attendant Judy Beyer will ring the bells of remembrance. Captain Dosh was a close personal friend of Captain Jason Dahl. Judy Beyer was a friend and colleague of both Wanda Green and Lorraine Bay, and flew with many members of the crew aboard Flight 93.
Christian Adams.
Lorraine Grace Bay.
Todd M. Beamer. Alan Anthony Bevan. Mark Bingham.
Diora Frances Bodley.
Sandy Waugh Bradshaw. Marion R. Britton. Thomas E. Burnett, Jr. William Joseph Cashman.
Georgine Rose Corrigan.
Patricia Cushing.
Beloved cousin and dearest friend, Captain Jason M. Dahl.
Joseph DeLuca. Patrick Joseph Driscoll.
My cousin, Edward Porter Felt.
Jane C. Folger.
my beloved sister, Wanda Anita Green.
Andrew Sonny Garcia. Jeremy Logan Glick.
My sister, Colleen Laura Fraser.
Kristen Osterholm White Gould. Lauren Catuzzi Grancolis, an unborn child. Donald Freeman Green. Linda Grunland. Richard J. Guadagno.
First Officer Leroy Homer.
Toshiya Kuge.
With all our family's love, Cece Ross Lyles.
Hilda Marson. Waleska Martinez. Nicole Carol Miller.
Our brother, Louis Joey Nacky II.
Donald Arthur Peterson. Jean Hoadley Peterson. Mark David Rothenberg. Christine Ann Snyder. John Talagnani. Honor Elizabeth Wainio.
And my beloved sister, Deborah Ann Jacobs Welsh.
The National Park Service is honored to be the trusted stewards of Flight 93 National Memorial. National memorials, monuments, and battlefields throughout the country honor and remember the sacrifices of those who, in an hour of need, rose to heights that defy all expectations. So why do people come here? What inspires them to travel, oftentimes many miles out of their way, to see this place? I believe the answer is quite simple: to honor the courageous acts of the 40 individuals aboard United Airlines Flight 93 and to better understand their story. While here, visitors may see a fawn nursing, a flock of Canada geese nestled within the memorial groves, a coyote running on a hillside, or even a black bear roaming along the forest's edge. Over the past 16 years, we have witnessed the transformation of a landscape, from an active coal mining operation to a living memorial. Since 2012, thousands of visitors and volunteers have planted more than 100,000 native seedlings to reforest these once barren hillsides. With their tremendous help, this land continues to be reclaimed by nature and healed by caring hands. This memorial has become a unique place for visitors to come find meaning and solace, to learn of the tragic events of September 11th, 2001, yes, but also to be restored and renewed. Today, as we gaze across this wildflower-filled meadow, we know that this restored landscape encourages visitors to make a deep, personal connection to those individuals, actions, and events of 16 years ago. I'd like to now introduce today's speakers. Tom Wolf was sworn in as the governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on January 20th, 2015. Governor Wolf grew up in Mount Wolf, Pennsylvania, a small borough outside of York, where he still resides. From his early beginnings in the Peace Corps to serving as chief executive officer of his family's business, Governor Wolf has always been community-driven. In 2006, he was appointed to serve in Governor Ed Rendell's cabinet as the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. He continues to work tirelessly on investing in education, improving access to quality health care, protecting our seniors, and supporting issues close to all Pennsylvanians. From the beginning, the governor's office has supported the needs of the community during some of its hardest moments. Former Governor Tom Ridge committed nearly unlimited resources to local, state, and federal agencies to make it possible to continue the work that needed to be done, from the federal investigation to the completion of a permanent national memorial. The governor's office has continued that relationship over the past 16 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Governor Tom Wolf.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And Mr. Vice President, welcome to Pennsylvania. Thank you all for being here today and to help us remember those we lost 16 years ago today. Every year on this day, we come together here in Shanksville to remember, to never forget what true sacrifice looks like. Every year when I come here, I am again overwhelmed by the story of bravery and heroism that took place in the skies above our Commonwealth. And I am continually overwhelmed by the strength of the loved ones I see here. Because every year from the ashes of a tragedy rises a new kind of family, all of us. We come together, we reminisce, we pray, we hold each other, and we build bonds that give us the strength to return so that we can honor the passengers and the crew of Flight 93. We gather here to remember a group of ordinary citizens ordinary citizens who did not know that they would become a powerful symbol of what patriotism truly means. Those who we are here to remember lost their lives protecting their fellow Americans. They performed heroic acts in the face of unthinkable circumstances. And after reportedly finding out about the tragedy occurring in the rest of the nation, they stood up and they said, enough. We cannot calculate the number of lives that they saved that day. We cannot know the true impact of their heroism. But we do know that they have given all Americans an example to live by. The Bible says that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. We all hope that if tested someday, hopefully far off, we would all have the strength, the courage, the resolve to make the ultimate sacrifice they made to protect others. Some of us never see that test. Some of us never will. But those that we remember here today met that test face to face on an ordinary Tuesday, just like today. And not only did they find themselves equal to an unthinkable task, they found themselves better than that task. And they laid down their lives to protect us. They did not know who they were saving, but they stood up to evil in the form they encountered it. What can you say about courage like that? How can you commemorate selflessness like that? How can you repay a debt so large? We cannot adequately thank those brave passengers and those crew members enough for the actions they took on that ordinary Tuesday. But we come together to show them and their families that while we know we can never repay the debt that we owe them, we will try. We'll also show them that we remember. We will never forget what they've done for us, and we will strive to live by the values that they exemplified on that day. And we will hope that their example gives us strength enough so that should we one day face what they did, we can have some fraction of the courage they showed all of us. I want to thank you all again for being here today. I want to thank especially the families of the passengers and the crew of Flight 93 for their bravery, for their sacrifice, and for letting us mourn with them. Because your family members are our heroes. Let us continue to live lives that would make them proud. Let us live by the example of selflessness that they set for all of us. And let us never forget what they did here. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Wolf. While serving as the superintendent over the past several years, I have come to know the president of the families of Flight 93, Mr. Gordon Felt, quite well. I have come to know Gordy, as he is known to friends and family, on a personal level, and have admired his unwavering and steadfast dedication to this sacred place. Gordy's brother, Edward, was a passenger aboard Flight 93. Gordy was a member of the Federal Advisory Commission, which guided the development of this national memorial. He now leads the families of Flight 93, which is dedicated to memorializing the 40 passengers and crew of Flight 93 in partnership with the National Park Service, the Friends of Flight 93, and to the National Park Foundation. Gordy and his wife Donna live in central New York, where they own and operate Camp Northwood, a socially therapeutic residential summer camp for autistic spectrum and learning challenged children. Following Gordy's remarks, Celtic Air will perform a moving tribute titled One Voice. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gordy Felt.
I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the pain and suffering that is currently taking place in Florida, Texas, Louisiana, and across the southeastern part of our country. Those folks are struggling. And our thoughts and hearts are with you today as you go through this journey that you are on. Vice President Pence, Secretary Zinke, Governor Wolf, families and friends of Flight 93, members of the National Park Service charged with the care of this beautiful memorial, ambassadors, volunteers, and visitors. I welcome you to the commemorative services honoring those that were taken from us on this field 16 years ago today. It is always good to return to the sacred ground in order to honor those individuals and to be inspired by the actions that they took, fighting that first battle against the terrorist threat to our country on September 11th, 2001. September 11th marked a drastic pivot for us all, most especially to those of us here today that felt the personal loss of a family member. To the thousands of those personally affected by September 11th, today marks yet another anniversary of loss, pain, anger, and hope. We chose to come to this site today, just as thousands of others made the conscious effort to attend ceremonies in New York and at the Pentagon in order to honor those that perished, to honor those that were not given a choice, but instead were taken from their families and communities in such a violent manner. The trajectories of their lives were extinguished far too soon, and the ensuing ripple effect has altered the course of our lives and that of generations to come. We are gathered here today to remember 40 extraordinary individuals that were lost to a brand of depersonalized violence that has unfortunately moved more toward the norm than at any other period in our lifetimes. This seemingly geometric progression of violence directed at governments, but victimizing individual human beings, is abhorrent and affects the innocent with little regard for the dignity and sanctity of life. Because of this, it is critical that we not allow the world to forget the actions taken by our heroes, the innocents that said no more. 40 citizens, a spectrum of nationalities, races, religions, political leanings, strangers to one another that morning, forged a bond that recognized evil incarnate and chose to fight. They didn't fight for their religion, their ethnicity, their nationality, or their political ideology. They instinctually fought for what was important: to get home to their loved ones. And just as important, they fought because giving in to evil should never be an option. When faced with the horrific reality of this new paradigm forced upon the world that day, their quick and deliberate response was such that their actions set a standard to which future generations will and already do aspire. While they lost their lives, they won the battle, and for that we are forever in their debt. 16 years from the day, we are still here. Our nation's memorial to the heroes of Flight 93 stands proudly on the site of their final battle. And in September of next year, we will be complete with the dedication of the Tower of Voices, a 93-foot tall tower standing defiantly at the entrance of this magnificent memorial. 40 wind chimes representing the voices of our heroes, powerful, peaceful, eternal. Because of the actions of our loved ones, the Capitol building stands as a beacon of hope for our democracy. And millions of visitors have found their way to rural southwestern Pennsylvania to pay their respects and to remember those 40 heroes that represent us all: husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, children, grandparents, uncles, aunts, siblings, friends, and neighbors. It could have been you. It could have been me. Our loved ones never gave up, and neither should we, the people. We must remember that by standing together as individuals, Just as our loved ones did, we become stronger, more focused on our objectives, less likely to be driven by depersonalized ideology, and more likely to do what is right in the face of evil and uncertainty. Let us all pledge to remember this day, our heroes, and their collective actions throughout the year. September 11th must continue to be more than just a day in history, but rather a call to action, a call to our conscience, so that we never forget who we are and who we aspire to be. Thank you.
each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three. Singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
Thank you, Gordy, and to all of you, Celtic Air. It was beautiful. Thank you. Ryan Zinke was sworn in as the 52nd Secretary of the Interior in March of this year. A fifth-generation Montanan and former United States Navy SEAL commander, Secretary Zinke has championed sportsman access, conservation, forest management, responsible energy development, and smart management of federal lands. Growing up in a logging and rail town near Glacier National Park, he has had a lifelong appreciation for conserving America's natural beauty and public spaces. Secretary Zinke enlisted in the Navy in 1985 and was soon selected to join the elite force, where he would build an honorable career until his retirement in 2008. He retired with the rank of commander after leading SEAL operations across the globe, including several as the deputy and acting commander of Joint Special Forces in Iraq and 2 tours at SEAL Team 6. He was the first Navy SEAL elected to the United States House of Representatives and is the first SEAL to serve as a cabinet secretary. Secretary Zinke leads an agency with more than 70,000 employees who are the stewards for 20% of our nation's lands, including wildlife refuges, public lands, national parks, monuments, national memorials, such as this one. Please welcome the United States Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke.
Well, thanks, Mike. And what a beautiful day, as it was that fateful morning. We all remember 9/11 somewhat differently. For me, I was a SEAL instructor in Coronado. On that fateful morning, I knew that our country would be forever changed. Now, as I was with the cabinet members on Saturday, looking at Hurricane Irma and planning the recovery of Harvey and looking at the forest fires in the West, the Vice President and I had a conversation about his experience as he was standing on the steps of our nation's capital. And so the heroism and courage of the 40 passengers and crew is special because it was their actions that protected our nation. I have fought in a lot of battles in my life, and truly their fight was worth fighting for. I'm grateful for this Vice President because he has continued the fight against evil. His family has continued the fight against evil. As his son is a first Marine or a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps, trained to be a pilot. His father, who fought in Korea as a second lieutenant in the United States Army, earned a Bronze Star. And I'm convinced that it was from his father that the Vice President learned that not only must you fight, but you must win. So this morning, it is my high honor to introduce a man that I've gotten to know as a great man of conviction, of character, of faith, a man who loves his country, loves the people that are in it, and also understands that evil cannot win, evil cannot break the spirit of our great nation. And so with that, it's my high honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States of America, Mike Pence.
Governor Wolf, Secretary Zinke, Congressman Schuster, Congressman Rothfuss, Superintendent Clark, distinguished guests, but most of all, family members of the heroes who perished in this very field. Reverend Britton, Gordy Felt, and all of those who join us and look on today. We are deeply humbled to join you on this most solemn of days at this Flight 93 Memorial Annual Remembrance Ceremony at this common field one day that became a field of honor forever. President Trump asked me to be here to pay a debt of honor to the 40 heroes of Flight 93, to all the fallen and their families, and to the generation of heroes they inspired, and to tell you that his heart is here in Pennsylvania, especially with all of you who lost loved ones 16 years ago. Our President observed this day of remembrance at the Pentagon Memorial, where moments ago he paid tribute to the 184 men and women who lost their lives there. All of our hearts as well are with the families of the 2,753 men and women, their families, who lost their lives at the World Trade Center in New York City. As the President said just moments ago, we grieve with every family of the innocent souls who were murdered by terrorists that day. And we will never forget what happened on September 11th, 2001. Today we pause as a nation not so much to remember tragedy as to celebrate heroism and patriotism. But permit me to say that on this day, as Gordy said before, our hearts and our prayers are also with our fellow Americans in Florida and throughout the region who've suffered loss in the winds and waters of Hurricane Irma. At this very hour, first responders and new citizen heroes are being forged among the people of Florida. And as the President has said, I say again, to those affected by Hurricane Irma, we are with you. We will stay with you, and we will be with you every day after this tempest passes to restore, recover, and rebuild. Everyone remembers where they were on this day 16 years ago. A mom rousing her children to get ready for school. A farmer wrapping up the morning chores. A coal miner finishing the third shift and heading home. As a new member of Congress, I was going through my normal workday routine at the United States Capitol when I learned of the attacks in New York City and at the Pentagon. I will always remember the scenes of that day, watching the Capitol complex being evacuated. It was as though the building was literally hemorrhaging with people running in every direction. I found myself just across the street from the U.S. Capitol eventually, on the top floor of the headquarters of the Capitol Police Chief. I was there with leaders of the House and Senate. Shortly after I arrived, the Chief of Police set the phone back down and informed the leaders gathered there that there was a plane inbound to the Capitol. And he said it was 12 minutes out. In that moment, the room became silent. And as people began to make plans, I found myself looking out the window, where just across the street was the Capitol Dome, with that majestic Statue of Freedom standing atop it. A dome that's a symbol of the ideals of this nation, of freedom and democracy for all the world. So we waited. It was the longest 12 minutes of my life. But it turned to 13 minutes, then 14. And then we were informed that the plane had gone down in a field in Pennsylvania. In the days ahead, like every American, we would learn the story of the 40 heroes of Flight 93, men and women who looked evil squarely in the eye, and without regard to their personal safety, they rushed forward to save lives. They were mothers and fathers, your brothers and sisters, sons and daughters from every walk of life, of every background. Mark Bingham was on his way to be an usher in his college friend's wedding. C.C. Lyles was living her childhood dream to be a flight attendant in the wake of a career in law enforcement. Lauren Grant-Colas carried the spark of life within her, an unborn child, 3 months alone. And Bill Cashman, himself a former Army paratrooper with the 101st Airborne, had actually helped to build the World Trade Center with his own 2 hands. And there were so many others whose names we just heard echo into the wind this morning. They were ordinary people, but on that day they became extraordinary. We all know the story. Flight 93 took off at 8:42, departing Newark to San Francisco, when 46 minutes later, terrorists seized control. At 9:35, the plane diverted toward Washington, D.C. The passengers called their loved ones, only to find out what was happening across the country. They learned what the rest of America knew. The World Trade Center had been struck. The Pentagon had been hit only a few moments after they were hijacked. They figured out that the terrorists intended to use their plane for the same purpose. But as Tom Burnett told his wife on the phone, we're going to do something. And they did. The men and women of Flight 93 began to join together. They devised a plan in those short moments. They knew their objective. They not only planned, but history records that they prayed. Together with Lisa Jefferson, a phone operator on the ground below, we're told they prayed the Lord's Prayer and recited those ancient words. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. At 9:57, after only 29 minutes, Todd Beamer spoke those words that America and the world will never forget. Let's roll. They charged the cockpit. They took hold of their fate. And 6 minutes later, at 10:03, Flight 93 plummeted here to the earth. The brave men and women aboard sacrificed their lives for the country we call home. We gather here today because the men and women of Flight 93 are heroes. And this beautiful memorial stands as a testament to the American people's undying reverence for their service and sacrifice. Each of their 40 names are etched into this marble. They're carved into the memory of the American people as well, even as they're seared into the hearts of you that were left behind. The Bible tells us that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and to the families of the fallen here. That'll be our prayer for you today. You honor us by your presence. And as the President said this morning, you honor our heroes. You renew our courage. And you strengthen us all. Today, as a nation, we mourn with you. We remember with you. And we look forward to the day when we will hear the chimes in this place, in the Tower of Voices. We'll turn the whisper of the wind into a heroic call to action. It will remember them and echo across this field and across America for generations to come. At 93 feet, that Tower of Voices that will be completed by this time next year will honor the heroes of Flight 93, and that soaring structure will hold those 40 chimes, each with a different musical note to symbolize the voices of the 40 men and women we remember today. The notes, when played together, I'm told, will form a perfect harmony. Just as in their final moments, the men and women of Flight 93 worked together to defend freedom. The American people will forever be inspired by their courage and resolve. We honor them by remembering them. And we honor them by ensuring that we do all in our power as a nation to prevent such evil from ever reaching our shores again. As President Trump has reminded us, we are we are in the midst of a war between good and evil. And the first battle in that war took place in the skies above us and ended in this grassy meadow. We cannot hallow this place beyond what the heroes of Flight 93 have already done. When the plane went down, the heroes aboard it were the first of a new generation of Americans to rise up as citizen soldiers in what would come to be known as the global war on terror. It is remarkable to think that in the wake of their service and sacrifice, America itself experienced a rebirth of unity, of purpose, and a rededication to our most sacred ideal of freedom. And every day for 16 years, their actions have inspired many more of our fellow citizens to stand up, to step forward, and to follow in their heroic service. The President said today, America cannot be intimidated, and in the aftermath of September 11th, we've seen tens of thousands of Americans step forward to serve their communities and protect our families and defend our freedom. They've donned the uniform of first responders, firefighters, police officers, and more than 5 million Americans have stepped forward to serve in the armed forces of the United States of America since September 11th. These men and women turned what was a day of tragedy into a triumph of freedom as our nation rallied together and charged forward to meet the enemy on our terms, on their soil. And we will always cherish the memory of the nearly 7,000 Americans who have given their lives on the field of battle since that day 16 years ago today. Like the heroes of Flight 93, we will never forget their service, their sacrifice, or the families they left behind. But we must remind ourselves on this solemn day of remembrance that the threat remains. And even now, the menace of global terrorism brings violence across the wider world to places like London and Paris and Barcelona. In Iraq and Syria, the barbarians known as ISIS continue to plot attacks against America. against our allies and all who cherish freedom. But under the leadership of President Donald Trump as our Commander-in-Chief, our armed forces have ISIS on the run in Iraq and Syria, and we will not rest or relent until we hunt down and destroy them at their source. And we also do well to remember that the perpetrators of 9/11 organized and orchestrated their attacks from a safe haven of Afghanistan. And just a few short weeks ago, President Trump renewed our commitment to see the fight in Afghanistan through to an honorable and enduring outcome that will be worthy of the tremendous sacrifices that have been made. Some 4 weeks ago, President Trump expressed the full commitment of the United States to, in his words, destroy terrorist organizations and the radical ideology that drives them. And so we will. America will remain engaged in Afghanistan until we eliminate the terrorist threat to our homeland and our people once and for all. We've made great gains. Our resolve is stronger than ever. And I promise you, together as one nation and one people, we will drive the cancer of terrorism from the face of the earth. We fight because our families deserve to live in safety and security. We fight because our fallen heroes demand justice. And so long as we have strength, we will honor their memories and do right by the people and the nation they died to defend. So I'm here on behalf of our President and all the American people to pay a debt of honor. A debt of honor to the heroes of Flight 93. A debt of honor to a generation of heroes that followed their inspiring example in and out of uniform, at home and abroad. But I'm also here to pay a debt of gratitude to the heroes of Flight 93 on a much more personal basis. For their actions on that day in these skies saved American lives. And as my wife Karen, who joins me here today, knows, it's a debt I don't think I'll ever be able to repay. Because among the many lives that were saved by their selfless courage, they might well have saved my own life that day, 16 years ago. You know, this isn't our first time standing in this field here in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Not more than a year after that fateful day, Karen and I brought our 3 small children here to this hallowed ground on a drive back from Washington to Indiana. That day, we did not find this extraordinary memorial. We found only a makeshift memorial. No more than a plywood wall painted with the names of the fallen, a timeline, and a wooden cross out in the field. It was that day, with the help of a park ranger, that I learned personally of the sequence of events that day. I asked her if the U.S. Capitol was in fact the target, what time would the plane have reached the Capitol building? And what she told me, I'll never forget. For at the time, she said, standing with hundreds of others, I was standing near the east front of the House of Representatives. I will always believe that I and many others in our nation's capital were able to go home that day to hug our families because of the courage and selflessness of the heroes of Flight 93. So for me, it's personal. And I speak on behalf of a grateful nation. But thank you for giving me the privilege of speaking on behalf of my little family as well. When heroes fall, the nation mourns. For no greater love has a man than this, that he should lay down his life for his friends. To the families of the fallen, as President Trump promised this morning, I say now, the memory of your loved ones will never die. They will always be with us. Their heroic story in our minds, our hearts, enshrined in the memory of this country. As long as America endures, we will tell their story, and generations of Americans will ever be inspired by the faithful and courageous words and deeds of the heroes of Flight 93. May God bless our beloved fallen. May God bless and comfort the families gathered here and all those who suffered loss on this day 16 years ago. And may God continue to bless the United States of America.
There are no words, there is no song. Is there a balm that can heal these wounds that'll last a lifetime long? And when the stars have burned to dust, hand in hand we still will stand, because we must. In one single no words, there is no song. Is there a balm that can heal these wounds that last a lifetime long? And when the stars have burned to dust, hand in hand we still will stand, because we must. There are no words, there is no song. Is there a balm that can heal these wounds that last a lifetime long? And when the stars have burned to dust, hand in hand we still will stand, because we must.
Ladies and gentlemen, Celtic Air has provided us with beautiful and touching music, and for that, we are grateful. Please lead me in a round of applause. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. God bless America. Wow. Before our observance concludes, please allow me a moment to recognize the many volunteers who serve at the National Memorial today and every day. Many of our volunteers began helping the families and passengers of the crew of Flight 93 shortly after the crash in 2001. Since that time, so many have genuinely come to the site each and every day to help park staff and to welcome our visitors with a warm smile. I would also like to voice my sincere appreciation for the members of our local communities who came together in 2001 and continue to work in support of this national memorial. And finally, I would be remiss if I did not recognize 3 individuals who previously served in leadership roles here at Flight 93. Joanne Hanley, Jeff Reinbold, and Keith Newland. Thank you all. Thank you all for your many years of service to this special place and to the National Park Service. And finally, and most importantly, I extend my sincere gratitude to the families of Flight 93 for your unwavering strength and resolve, your kind words of encouragement, and your leadership as we continue our mission to remember and honor the heroes of Flight 93. Once again, all of us at Flight 93 National Memorial appreciate all of you for taking the time this day, this morning, to reflect and remember those affected by the events of September 11th, 2001. Together, we continue to move forward. We continue to put these tragic events of our recent history behind us and lean on the hope and strength of those whose actions changed a nation forever. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you please remain seated while family members make their way to shuttle buses for a private wreath-laying ceremony at the Memorial Plaza located to my right. National Park Service Rangers will be available for various programs in and around the Visitor Center and Learning Center complex, which will start shortly. The Visitor Center and the Memorial Plaza will reopen at approximately 1 p.m. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming to Flight 93 and honoring the absolutely incredible courage and the patriots aboard that airplane that morning. God bless you. Thank you.
With Solzhenitsyn as an inspiration, let us take a moment to find the gift of one difficult thing we have faced and to give thanksgiving for its teachings. The mutual gift of the memory of this day most especially. When the 40 faced their most difficult moment, with boldness, with courage, and with strength, in order to follow the good that was within them and to express a common good for all. As we remember their actions and their character, who are we to think less of ourselves in our suffering and in our hurt and in our pain? When evil challenges the good in us, we can, with their memory, in their memory, and through their memory, rise as they did. Please join in a moment of quiet and meditation. Amen and amen. Please be seated.
Thank you, Reverend Britton. At this time, Park Ranger Robert Franz will lead the reading of the names of the passengers and crew of Flight 93. Mr. Franz will be joined by family members reading the names of their loved ones. For each name, United Airlines Captain David Dosh and flight attendant Judy Beyer will ring the bells of remembrance. Captain Dosh was a close personal friend of Captain Jason Dahl. Judy Beyer was a friend and colleague of both Wanda Green and Lorraine Bay and flew with many members of the crew aboard Flight 93.
Christian Adams.
Lorraine Grace Bay.
Land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please remain standing as the Reverend Paul Britton, brother of passenger Marion R. Britton, leads us in a moment of silence.
The Russian writer and mystic Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote, "It was only when I lay there in the rotting prison straw that I sensed within myself the first stirrings of the good. Gradually it was disclosed to me that the line separating the good from the evil passes not through parties, states, or between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through all human hearts." And so he wrote, in a great strangeness for many of us, "So bless you, prison, for having been in my life."
Congressman Bill Schuster, representing Pennsylvania's 9th District, and representing Pennsylvania's 12th District, Congressman Keith Rothfuss, and Acting Director of the National Park Service, Mr. Mike Reynolds. And finally, to our many federal, state, and local representatives and partners, thank you for your continuous contributions in keeping alive the memory of the passengers and crew of Flight 93. At this time, will you please rise for the singing of our national anthem, performed by the United States Air Force's Celtic Air.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet
Good morning and welcome. My name is Stephen Clark, and I have the honor of serving as the superintendent of the 5 National Park Service units located here in beautiful western Pennsylvania, including Flight 93 National Memorial. We come together this day to honor the heroes of Flight 93, who, in the skies over this field, gave their lives in order to thwart an attack on our nation's capital. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the many dignitaries and representatives in attendance today. First, I'd like to recognize the president of the Families of Flight 93, Gordon Felt, and all of the family members in attendance this morning. The United States Vice President Mike Pence and his wife, Second Lady Karen Pence. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf, Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke and his wife Lola,